The Enigma of the Silent Years. Exploring the 18-year gap in Jesus' life. The sacred texts of the Bible, particularly the Gospels, offer humanity a profound and transformative narrative about the life of Jesus of Nazareth. We are told of his miraculous conception and birth in Bethlehem, a pivotal event foretold by prophets centuries before. We are given glimpses into his early childhood, including the remarkable account in the temple at the age of 12, where he astonished the learned teachers of the law with his understanding and answers, leaving his parents amazed and bewildered. This moment is a brief flash of divine wisdom shining through the youthful form. And then, abruptly, silence. From the age of 12, a vast expanse of 18 years disappears from the pages of Scripture. For nearly 2 decades, the narrative of Jesus' life goes completely quiet. There are no accounts of miracles performed during this period, no sermons delivered, no records of extensive travels, no detailed chronicles of his daily life or activities. It is as if time itself paused, leaving a significant void in the most important biography ever written. Why this profound silence? What transpired during these 18 years that the Gospel writers chose to omit? This mystery, often referred to as the lost years of Jesus, has intrigued, puzzled, and sometimes provoked historians, theologians, and believers for centuries, sparking endless debate and speculation. What the Gospels actually say and don't say. The canonical Gospels, our primary sources for the life of Jesus, offer remarkably little information about this period. The Gospel of Luke, which provides the most detailed account of Jesus' birth and childhood, offers only a single, concise sentence summarizing the years following the temple incident. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and man. Luke 2 verse 52. That is the sum total of the scriptural record concerning Jesus' life from age 12 until he reappears on the scene at approximately age 30, being baptized by John the Baptist and commencing his public ministry. This single sentence is pregnant with meaning, suggesting growth and development on multiple levels: intellectual, wisdom; physical, stature; spiritual, favor with God; and social, favor with man. Yet, it provides no specific details about how this growth occurred, where he was, or what he was doing during this lengthy interval. The silence is not merely a narrative gap or an oversight on the part of the Gospel writers. It appears to be deliberate. The authors, guided by divine inspiration, chose to focus their narratives on specific aspects of Jesus' life, primarily his birth, his public ministry, including his teachings, miracles, and interactions, his death, and his resurrection. The nearly 2 decades of his early adulthood are intentionally glossed over. And the question persists: why this intentional omission? Exploring theories and clues from history. Over the centuries, faced with this biblical silence, researchers, historians, and spiritual seekers from various traditions have proposed numerous theories to fill the void and explain what might have happened during Jesus' lost years. The hidden preparation theory, the most widely accepted and theologically grounded theory within traditional Christianity, is that Jesus simply lived a quiet, ordinary, devout life in Nazareth. According to this view, he spent these years learning and practicing carpentry, working alongside his earthly father, Joseph, and living within the framework of Jewish tradition and community life in a small Galilean village. This period is seen as a season of hidden spiritual growth, obedience to his parents and to God, and patient waiting for the appointed time to begin his public ministry. Proponents of this theory argue that the silence reflects humility, a deliberate choice by God to allow his Son to experience the mundane realities of human life before stepping into the spotlight. They emphasize that Jesus, being fully human as well as fully divine, needed this time of formation and preparation. However, critics and those seeking more dramatic explanations often ask, wouldn't such a significant figure, even in his hidden years, have left at least some trace in historical records, either Jewish or Roman? Why is there absolutely no contemporary external record confirming his presence or activities during this long period? While the lack of records is not necessarily proof of absence, records from that time and region are scarce. It fuels the desire for alternative explanations. The missing writings theory. Some early church historians and figures, such as Irenaeus, 2nd century AD, and Justin Martyr, 2nd century AD, hinted that there were indeed more stories and traditions about Jesus' early life circulating in the early Christian communities that were not included in the four canonical Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This has led to the study of apocryphal texts, non-canonical writings about Jesus' life that emerged in the early centuries AD. Texts like the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, not to be confused with the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings, contain dramatic, though often debated and theologically problematic, tales of young Jesus performing miracles, sometimes in a way that seems capricious or even vengeful. In one famous account from this text, he molds birds from clay on the Sabbath and brings them to life, scattering them to the air. These apocryphal writings were ultimately rejected from the Christian canon by early church leaders, who deemed them to be legendary, mythical, or even heretical, lacking apostolic authority and often contradicting the established understanding of Jesus' character and mission as presented in the canonical Gospels. Could it be, some speculate, that the early church intentionally suppressed or excluded certain aspects of Jesus' early life stories because they were seen as too strange, too controversial, or not fitting the narrative they wished to present? While possible, the more widely accepted view is that these apocryphal texts are later inventions, reflecting imaginative attempts to fill the gap left by the canonical silence, rather than authentic historical accounts. The Eastern Journey theory, perhaps the most controversial and widely debated theory, suggests that during these lost years, Jesus traveled extensively outside of Judea and Galilee. Proponents of this theory propose that he journeyed to the east to India, Tibet, Persia, or Egypt, studying with mystics, scholars, philosophers, and spiritual leaders of various traditions. This theory often draws upon certain Eastern texts and oral traditions that speak of a wise man from the West, who visited their lands, taught about peace, love, compassion, and monotheism, and whose teachings bore some resemblance to those of Jesus. In the late 19th century, a Russian explorer named Nicholas Notovich claimed to have discovered ancient records in a Buddhist monastery in Ladakh, India, detailing the life of a figure named Isa, a foreign teacher who preached in various temples across the East. Notovich's claims have been widely challenged and largely discredited by historians and religious scholars. No independent verification of his alleged manuscript has ever been confirmed, and many believe his account was a fabrication. However, the theory persists in some circles, fueled by the desire to connect Jesus with other great spiritual traditions and to explain the source of his profound wisdom. While intriguing, there is no credible historical or archaeological evidence to support the idea of Jesus traveling to the East during these years. The canonical Gospels firmly place Jesus within the context of first-century Judaism and the region of Palestine. Intentional silence for a divine reason. From a theological perspective, many scholars and believers suggest that the silence itself is not a problem to be solved, but rather a part of the divine message. They argue that the 18 years of silence reflect the spiritual discipline of waiting, a time of unseen preparation, obedience, and formation in the life of the Messiah. According to this view, the emphasis is not on the specific events or activities that occurred during those years, but on the fact that Jesus spent this time growing and preparing in obscurity. It highlights the value of the hidden seasons of life, times when we may not be in the spotlight or engaged in grand public activities, but are nonetheless growing, learning, and being formed by God for future purposes. They argue that the Gospels are not intended to be comprehensive biographies in the modern sense, detailing every year of a person's life. Instead, they are theological testimonies, written with a specific purpose: to proclaim Jesus as the Messiah, the Son of God, and to call people to faith in him. From this perspective, the details of his early adulthood were simply not deemed essential to that central message. What matters is not where Jesus was or what he was doing in those years, but who he emerged as at the age of 30, a man filled with power, wisdom, and authority, ready to embark on a ministry that would change the course of human history. What does it mean for us? Whether Jesus spent those 18 years quietly in Nazareth, studying forgotten texts, or traveling to distant lands, we may never definitively know in the way that historical records satisfy. The biblical silence remains. But this silence is not empty. It speaks volumes about profound spiritual truths that are relevant to our own lives. It speaks of God's timing. Just as Jesus waited patiently for the appointed time to begin his ministry, we too are called to trust in God's timing for our lives, understanding that there are seasons of preparation before seasons of public service or fulfillment. It speaks of the value of preparation in the hidden seasons. Much like a seed growing underground before it breaks through the surface, significant growth and formation often happen away from the public eye, in times of quiet discipline, learning, and obedience. These unseen years shaped Jesus for the immense task ahead. It speaks of the truth that sometimes, greatness grows in silence, away from applause, beyond recognition, in the quiet corners of life where character is forged and faith is deepened. The lost years of Jesus may not be lost at all. They may be a deliberate reminder from Scripture that God often works in ways that are unseen, quiet, and seemingly ordinary, preparing individuals for extraordinary purposes. Final thought. The Gospels were not written as exhaustive historical biographies detailing every moment of Jesus' life. They were written as invitations to believe, as testimonies to his identity, his mission, and his saving power. And perhaps the greatest mystery of the lost years is not a geographical puzzle or a historical gap to be filled with speculation. It is a profound spiritual mystery about the process of divine and human formation, about the hidden life of the Messiah, and about who he became during those silent years. A man who, in just 3 public years of ministry, would unleash a force of love, truth, and redemption that would indeed turn the world upside down. The power and authority he demonstrated in those final years speak volumes about the depth of preparation that must have occurred in the 18 years of silence.